Welcome, fellow travelers of the forgotten roads and wanderers of wilds to the verdant enclave. I'm your host, and sometimes friendly DM. More relevant to today's discussion, I'm also your fellow wanderer and wilderness guide to the Ranger class of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning from the last few videos, thank you for continuing on this journey into the Ranger class with me. Last time, we discussed the level 4 features, when the Ranger chooses between an ability score increase or a feat, if your DM allows it. If you want to hear the details, please feel free to check out the videos. So, what happens next? Well, something rather awesome for martial classes. Three things are added to your Ranger, two of which are automatic: extra attack and an increase to your proficiency bonus. Extra attack impacts your character's tactical abilities, possibly your resource management, and your timing, while your proficiency bonus is a little more subtle. The third feature gained is your choice as a ranger, what spells you will choose, as well as whether or not you will exchange one of your first spells for a new one. Extra attack is the cornerstone for any of the martial classes, no less so for the ranger. This is not a feature based on choice, but it can impact what choices the ranger player will make. For example, if your table tracks resources, particularly arrows shot, then archers need to realize that they are going to run out of arrows more quickly the more shots they fire. Now, not many tables require this level of gameplay, but some will, and I encourage DMs to require their players to track those arrows, the same way you have spellcasters track their spent spell slots. An easy workaround, of course, is to buy more quivers of arrows and have your teammates carry them for you. But more specifically for the Ranger subclasses, the extra attack will impact your decisions and tactics. For Colossus Slayer players, one of the biggest handicaps is that their feature requires their target to be already wounded. This has a simple enough workaround by holding your attack until someone wounds an enemy for you. But now that tactic switches a little bit in focus, as the Ranger can now wound their enemy with their first attack, thereby gaining their feature's use on the second attack. For Giant Killers, things change as well, possibly a little bit more significantly, especially if they wish to cast Cure Wounds on themselves. They will need to weigh that choice against the value of 2 attacks now instead of 1, though they will still have the option of their reaction attack to rely on, as long as they're facing a large or larger enemy. Otherwise, with a single weapon, Giant Killers can now get up to 3 attacks per round if they are up against a larger enemy, with their attack, their extra attack, and then their reaction. Horde Breakers now get to make 3 attacks per turn, if they are up against at least 2 enemies within 5 feet of each other and in range of the weapon they're using. Now, for a point of reference, fighters will also get to make 3 attacks per round if they are using 2 weapons, whereas the Horde Breaker Ranger can use a single weapon and a shield and still get 3 attacks. Or the fighter can, once per short rest, make 5 attacks as a 2-weapon fighter in a single round, if they want to use their action surge. Otherwise, fighters have to wait until they are 11th level to reliably get 3 attacks per round with a single weapon, whereas the Giant Killer and the Horde Breaker can get that number of attacks circumstantially from 5th level on. Now, how this works with the Beastmaster and the Beast Companion is in primarily increasing the tactical flexibility of the ranger. Where before the ranger had to choose between making an attack themselves or having their beast attack with their action, now they can finally combine their two separate attacks, attacking two entirely different enemies simultaneously or teaming up against a single enemy. This is partly what has led to confusion for how the Beastmaster and the Companion operate mechanically, as the phrasing is confusing amidst the rest of the text. But a good way to understand this is that this applies to the moment in which the Master commands the beast to attack, not every single round, since the Ranger does not need to do so every single round. Once the command to attack has been given, the Beast Companion can move where directed and attack, and the Ranger can move and take the attack, making two attacks for that round, and then on their next turn, the Beast Companion can attack, and the Master can use their action to attack twice now, the team making a combined 3 attacks per round, if the Ranger is using a single weapon. Earlier, back at 2nd level, the Ranger gained access to their 1st level spell slots and spells. This was covered previously, but in that video I missed another iconic Ranger spell for the list, the Goodberry spell. Interestingly, this raises the number of available 1st level spells to 13, illustrating a similarity between 1st level spell options and 2nd level spell options for the Ranger. Both of these levels, the Ranger gains access to a list of 13 total spells, 13 1st level, 13 2nd level. 8 of each of those lists comprehend utility type spells. For 1st level spells, there are 2 defensive options, and those increase to 4 at 2nd level spells, while offensive options actually decrease from 3 spells at 1st level to only 1 at 2nd. The Ranger can now have a total of 4 spells available to them, with 4 1st level spell slots and 2 2nd level spell slots. This is where the common advice to just take Hunter's Mark really hurts new players, because spike growth can potentially cause far more damage, and to more than just one enemy, as long as they are on the ground. Friendly fire is a definite possibility with this spell, so be aware of that before casting, and coordinate with your teammates, as this spell does cover a very wide area. Keep in mind that Rangers don't get spellcasting focus, so unless you're using Tasha's Cauldron of Everything at your table, either be prepared to improvise the components on the go, or get your hands on a component pouch. But again, don't discount the other spells Rangers get access to that enhance their utility belt of options beyond damage in combat. Even find traps is not necessarily a bad spell, though it does not do as the name suggests. With a 120-foot range, this is a great way to detect the presence of an alarm spell, preventing accidentally alerting a dangerous spellcaster, or a glyph of warding, giving you a chance to keep your rogue from being fried by a lightning bolt, or the presence of a trapdoor, keeping your party from being dropped into a gelatinous cube. The spell does, however, reveal the general nature of a trap, but not the location, and only as long as the trap is within your line of sight. So this spell requires care and timing to use, and you would have to then use your other abilities, and those of your other teammates to reason out the location, discover the danger, and disarm the traps. It might still be better than walking into a fireball released by a glyph of warding, though. So consider and choose those spells which will lend themselves to your playstyle and your group dynamics. If you need to cover stealth, take Pass Without Trace. Facing a lot of ground forces like goblins and orcs, throw out spike growth on the ground ahead of them and watch them stumble through. Want to be a specialist in finding creatures, objects, or plants? Locate animals or plants, or locate object. Or you could take Dark Vision if you or one of your teammates lacks that racial ability. Again, at these levels, the most spells available to the Ranger are utility focused, aimed to enhance or fill a gap, while also allowing those casters with more spells and more spell slots to focus on things other than being a magical walking toolkit. The increase of your proficiency bonus affects your chance to hit with weapon attacks, your chance of success with skill checks and saving throws, and also your spell save DC, as well as your natural explorer terrain skills, thanks to the ranger's version of expertise. Coincidentally, the ranger gets to choose an additional natural explorer terrain in one more level, for which they can then double their proficiency bonus, which just got increased. But even more helpful, it extends to the Beastmaster's companion's armor class chance to hit relevant skills and/or saving throws and damage rolls. Let's now do a side-by-side comparison of a regular Bloodhawk and the Bloodhawk of a level 5 Beastmaster Ranger. First, the regular Bloodhawk has an armor class of 12, 7 hit points, and a skill in perception with a +4 bonus and a passive perception of 14. They have a +4 attack bonus and deal 1d4 piercing damage, or 4.5 on average. Second, the third and fourth level Beastmaster's Bloodhawk Companion has an armor class of 14, 12 hit points, and then 16 hit points as the ranger progresses from 3rd to 4th level. Meanwhile, their perception skill now has a +6 bonus, giving them a passive perception of 16. The companion here has a +6 attack bonus and deals 1d4 +4 piercing, or 6.5 on average. Finally, the 5th level Beastmaster's Bloodhawk Companion has an armor class of 15, 20 hit points, and their perception skill now has a +7 bonus, granting a passive perception of 17. Their beak now has a +7 attack bonus and deals 1d4 +5 piercing damage, or 7.5 damage on average. For perspective, that's equivalent damage to a dagger being wielded by a character who has maxed out their damage modifier by having a 20 in either their strength or dexterity. So, now that we've completed level 3 with the fighter and the ranger archers, how did their numbers turn out? The baseline average damage per hit, fair to say per round at this level, is 7.65. The fighter made a total of 25 attacks at level 3, 18 of which were hit, so the fighter at 3rd level was hitting 72% of the time. As an Eldritch Knight, the fighter used Firebolt twice, dealing 5 points of damage, which was 3% of his overall damage for this level. He used Burning Hands 5 times, for a total of 52 points of damage, which was 33% of his overall damage. The fighter used Action Surge 4 times, each to make an additional attack, adding a total of 15 points, or 9% of the fighter's total damage. Fog Cloud was used 3 times, not so much for damage, but for battlefield control. The fighter rolled a total of 160 points of damage, 64% of which was due to his weapons and 36 to his spells. Therefore, the total weapon damage per hit for this fighter at 3rd level is 5.72, which is 1.93 points below the baseline. This includes the uses of Action Surge. With the spell damage added in, the Eldritch Knight's average damage per hit moves up to 8.89, which is 1.24 points above the baseline. To me, this suggests then that the Eldritch Knight fighter needs to use their damage type spells more frequently than their action surge, just in order to beat the baseline. The Ranger made a total of 28 attacks at level 3, 20 of which were hits, so the Ranger at 3rd level was hitting 71.43% of the time, a little less than the fighter. The Ranger used Jump once, Long Strider 3 times, each to help the fighter, and Hunter's Mark 5 times, adding 41 points, or 18%, of the Ranger's overall damage at 3rd level. Colossus Slayer was used a total of 12 times at 3rd level, producing 46 points, or 20%, of the Ranger's overall damage. At 3rd level, the Ranger rolled a total of 227 points of damage, 81.94% of which was due to weapons, including Colossus Slayer, and 18% to Hunter's Mark, the Ranger's currently only offensive spell. The total weapon damage per hit for this Ranger at 3rd level is 9.3, which is 1.65 above the baseline, and 0.41 above the fighter, with the Eldritch Knight using both spells and action surge. When the Hunter's Mark damage is added in, the Ranger's average damage per hit becomes 11.35, which is 3.7 above the baseline and 2.46 above the Eldritch Knight using action surge and spells combined. The Ranger then did not need Hunter's Mark in order to beat the baseline or the fighter, as even without Hunter's Mark, the Ranger was still higher on average per hit than the fighter was, even when the fighter was using all of their expendable resources. And remember, the Ranger only used Long Strider on the fighter, not the Ranger. Therefore, the fighter still needed the Ranger's magical utility help on the battlefield. Here is the progression so far between the Eldritch Knight fighter and the Colossus Slayer hunter, compared to the baseline average damage per hit from levels 1 through 3, with the baseline for 4th level displayed. The blue line is the baseline. The gray line is the fighter using their action surge and spells, while the orange line is the Ranger using Colossus Slayer and Hunter's Mark. I think it's safe to say, at least for the Colossus Slayer, that Hunter's Mark is not the only way for a Ranger to be comparable to the fighter, but it certainly doesn't hurt. After all, adding Hunter's Mark at 2nd level did indeed contribute to the Ranger's overall damage for the level, as displayed now. The blue column represents the Ranger's overall damage for each level, and when the Ranger started using it at 2nd level, there is a clear distinction that something has changed in the dynamic between the Ranger and the fighter. But at 3rd level, it becomes clear that Hunter's Mark is not the only thing affecting the Ranger's damage, and in point of fact, Colossus Slayer actually ended up adding more on average than the spell did. Oh, and that's with me having forgotten to use it several rounds in a row. In other words, the blue column at 3rd level should have been higher than what it turned out to be. I hope you're finding this analysis as interesting as I am, and that you will continue to explore the Ranger class with me, as well as joining Adrian and Varen in the land of the Hunter. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.